Hi, happy Friday. As I put in the email too, next week is spring break, so I will not be doing any emails, you won't be doing any work. All you need to be doing is playing, having fun, relaxing, creating, anything that's just relaxing. We're pretending it's still spring break, like we've been in school for the last few weeks and we need to relax. So enjoy your time, enjoy. But for now, we are in the middle of chapter 2. So I'm going to continue reading. If you remember, Matilda has tricked her father, and she put super glue in his hat, and he can't get it off and doesn't know what's happening. So I think it's kind of funny. Matilda said, "There's a boy down the road who got super glue on his finger without knowing it and put his finger in his nose." Mr. Wormwood jumped. "What happened to him?" "The finger got stuck inside his nose," Matilda said, "and he had to go around like that for a week. People kept saying to him, 'Stop picking your nose.' And he couldn't do it. He couldn't do anything about it. He looked like an awful fool." "Serves him right," Mrs. Wormwood said. "He shouldn't have put his finger up there in the first place. It's a nasty habit. If all the children had super glue put on their fingers, they'd soon stop doing it." Matilda said, "Grown-ups do it too, Mommy. I saw you doing it yesterday in the kitchen." "That is quite enough from you," Mrs. Wormwood said, turning pink in embarrassment. Mr. Wormwood had to keep his hat on all throughout supper in front of the television. He looked ridiculous, and he stayed very quiet. When he went up to bed, he tried again to get the thing off, and so did his wife, but it wouldn't budge. "How am I supposed to have my shower?" he demanded. "You'll just have to do without it, won't you?" his wife said. A little later on, as she watched her skinny little husband skulking around the bedroom in his purple striped pajamas with his pork pie hat on his head, she thought how stupid he looked. Hardly the kind of man a wife dreams about, she told herself. Not this stupid man. Mr. Wormwood discovered that the worst thing about having a permanent hat on your head was having to sleep in it. It was impossible to lie comfortably on the pillow. "Now do stop fussing around," his wife told him after they had been tossing and turning for about an hour. "I expect it will be loose by the morning, and then I'll slip it easily off." But it wasn't loose by the morning, and it wouldn't slip off. So Mrs. Wormwood took her pair of scissors and cut the thing off of his head, bit by bit. First the top, then the brim, where the inner band had stuck to the hair all around the sides of the back. She had to chop off the hair right to the skin so that he finished up with a bald white ring around his head, like some sort of monk. And in the front, where the band had stuck directly to the bare skin, there remained a whole lot of small patches of brown leather stuff, and no amount of washing would get it off. Well, here's the picture. Doesn't do it justice, I don't think, but my imagination is showing me something really funny. At breakfast, Matilda said to him, "You must try to get those bits off your forehead, Daddy. It looks as though that you've got little brown insects crawling all over you. People will think you've got lice." "Be quiet," the father snapped. "Just keep your nasty mouth shut, will you?" All in all, it was the most satisfying experience ever for Matilda. But it was surely too much to hope that it taught her father a permanent lesson. The next chapter is called The Ghost. There was a calm in the Wormwood house for about a week after the superglue episode. The experience had clearly loosened Mr. Wormwood, and he seemed temporarily to have lost his taste for boasting and bullying. Then suddenly he struck again. Perhaps he had a bad day at the garage and had not sold enough crummy second-hand cars. There are so many things that make a man irritable when he arrives at home from work in the evening, and a sensible wife will usually notice the storm signals and will leave him alone until he simmers down. When Mr. Wormwood arrived back from the garage that evening, his face was as dark as a thundercloud, and somebody was clearly for the high jump pretty soon. His wife recognized the signals immediately and made herself scarce so he wouldn't explode at her. He then strode up into the living room. Matilda happened to be curled up in an armchair in the corner, totally absorbed in her book. Mr. Wormwood switched on the television and the screen lit up. The program blared. Mr. Wormwood glared at Matilda. She hadn't moved. She had somewhat trained herself by now to block out anything from that dreaded box. She kept reading right on, and for some reason this infuriated the father. Perhaps his anger was intensified because he saw her getting pleasure from something that was beyond his reach. A book, he thought. "Don't you ever stop reading?" he snapped at her. "Oh, hello, Daddy," she said pleasantly. "Did you have a good day?" "What is this trash?" he said, snatching the book from her hands. "It isn't trash, Daddy. It's lovely. It's called The Red Pony. It's by John Steinbeck, an American writer. Why don't you try it? You'd love it." "Filth," Mr. Wormwood said. "If it's by an American, it's certain to be filth. That's all they write about." "No, Daddy, it's beautiful. Honestly, it is. It's about—" "I don't want to know what it's about," Mr. Wormwood barked. "I am fed up with your reading anyway. Go find yourself something useful to do." With frightening suddenness, he now began ripping the pages out of the book in handfuls and throwing them at the wastebasket. Matilda froze in horror. The father kept going. There seemed a little doubt that the man felt some kind of jealousy. How dare she? He seemed to be saying with each rip of the page. How dare she enjoy reading when he couldn't? How dare she? "That's a library book," Matilda called. "It doesn't belong to me. I have to return it to Mrs. Phelps. She's going to be so angry." "Then you'll have to buy another one, won't you?" the father said, still tearing out pages. "You'll have to save your pocket money until there's enough in the kitty to buy a new one for your precious Mrs. Phelps, won't you?" With that, he dropped the now empty covers of the book into the basket and marched out of the room, leaving the television barking. Most children in Matilda's place would have burst into a flood of tears. She didn't do this. She sat there very still and white and thoughtful. She seemed to know that neither crying nor sulking ever got anyone anywhere. The only sensible thing to do when you're attacked is, as Napoleon once said, to counterattack. Matilda's wonderful, subtle mind was already at work devising yet another subtle punishment for the poisonous parents that she had. The plan that was now beginning to hatch in her mind depended, however, upon whether not Fred's parrot was really a good talker, as Fred made out. Fred was a friend of Matilda's. He was a small boy of 6 who lived just around the corner from her. And for days, he had been going on about this great talking parrot his father had given him. So the following afternoon, as soon as Mrs. Wormwood had departed in her car for yet another session of bingo, Matilda set out for Fred's house to investigate. She knocked on the door and asked if he would be kind enough to show her the famous bird. Fred was delighted and led her up to his bedroom, where the truly magnificent blue and yellow parrot sat on a tall cage. "There it is," Fred said. "Its name is Chopper." "Make it talk," Matilda said. "You can't make it talk," Fred said. "You have to be patient. It'll talk when it feels like it." They hung around for a while waiting. Suddenly the parrot said, "Hello, hello, hello." It was excitingly like a human voice. Matilda said, "Wow, that's amazing. What else can it say?" "Rattle my bones," the parrot said, giving a wonderful imitation of a spooky voice. "Rattle my bones." "He's always saying that," Fred told her. "What else can he say?" Matilda said. "Well, that's about it," Fred said. "But it's pretty marvelous, don't you think?" "It's fabulous," Matilda said. "Will you lend him to me just for one night?" "No," Fred said, "certainly not." "I'll give you all my next week's pocket money," Matilda said. That was different. Fred thought about it for a few seconds. All right, then, he said, if you promise to return him back tomorrow. Matilda snagged back her own empty house, carrying the tall cage in both hands. There was a large fireplace in the dining room, and she now set about welding the cage up the chimney and out of sight. This wasn't so easy, but she managed it in the end. So I'm predicting that because our chapter's name is The Ghost, that she keeps him there and he starts talking, and then the dad thinks there's a ghost and he's haunted and scared. Hee hee. That's her putting up the cage in the chimney. Hello, 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 the bird called out. Hello, hello. Shut up, you nut, Matilda said, and she went out to watch the soot off of her hands. That evening, while the mother and the father and the brother and Matilda were having supper as usual in the living room in front of the television, a voice came aloud and clear from the dining room across the hall. Hello, 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 it said. Harry, cried the mother, turning white. There's someone in the house. I've just heard a voice. So did I, said the brother. Matilda jumped up and switched off the telly. Shh, she said, listen. They all stopped eating and sat there, very tense, listening. Hello, 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 came the voice again. There it is, cried the brother. It's burglars, hissed the mother. They're in the dining room. I think they are, the father said, sitting tight. Then go out and catch them, Harry, hissed the mother. Go out and collar them red-handed. The father didn't move. He seemed in no hurry to dash off and be a hero in this scenario. His face had turned gray. So what do you think he's feeling right now? What emotion? Scared. Get on with it, hissed the mother. They're probably away with the silver now. The husband wiped his lips nervously with his napkin. Why don't we all go and look together, he said, scared. Come on, then, the brother said. Come on, Mom. They're definitely in the dining room, Matilda whispered. I'm sure they are. The mother grabbed a poker from the fireplace, which is like a stick to poke the fire, I think. The father took a golf club that was standing in the corner, and the brother seized a table lamp, ripping the plug out of its socket. Matilda took the knife that she had been eating with, and all four of them crept towards the dining room door. The father kept well behind the others. Hello, 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 came the voice again. Come on, Matilda cried as she burst into the room with her knife. Stick 'em up, she yelled. We've caught you. The others followed. And that's them. And that's the dad, way far away. The others followed her, waving their weapons. Then they stopped. They stared around the room, and there was no one there. There's no one here, the father said, great relieved. I heard him, Harry, the mother shrieked, still quacking. I distinctively heard the voices, so did you. I am certain I heard him, Matilda cried. He's in there somewhere. She began searching behind the sofa, behind the curtains. Then came the voice once again, soft and spooky this time. Rattle my bones, it said. Rattle my bones. They all jumped, including Matilda, who was a pretty good actress. They stared around the room. There was still no one there. It's a ghost, Matilda cried. Heavens help us, cried the mother, clutching her husband around the neck. I know it's a ghost, Matilda said. I've heard it before. The room is haunted. I thought you knew that. Save us, Save us, the mother screamed, almost throttling her husband. I'm getting out here, the father said, grayer than ever now, looking like he was going to faint. They all fled, slamming the door behind them. The next morning, Matilda managed to get the rather sooty and grumpy parrot down from the chimney and out the house without being seen. She carried it through the back door and ran with it all the way back to Fred's house. Did it behave itself? Fred asked. We had a lovely time with it, Matilda said. My parents just adored it. The next chapter, I'm going to read a little bit, not the whole thing, is called Arithmetic, which means math. Matilda longed for her parents to be good, loving, and understanding and honorable and intelligent. The fact that they were none of these things was something that she just had to put up with. It was not easy to do so. But the new game she had invented of punishing one or both of them each time they were beastly or mean to her made her life more or less bearable and less horrible. Being very small and very young, the only power Matilda had over anyone in her family was brain power. For sheer cleverness, she could run rings around them. But the fact remained that any 5-year-old girl in a family was always obliged to do what she was told. However obscene the orders might be, so however crazy her parents are, what they want her to do, she has to follow them. She's a 5-year-old girl. And we know that she's brilliant. Thus, she was always forced to eat dinner out of the TV room Thus, she was always forced to eat her evening meal out of the TV dinner trays in front of the dreaded, horrible TV box. She always had to stay alone on weekday afternoons, and whenever she was told to shut up, she had to shut up. Her safety valve, the thing that prevented her from going around the bend and go completely crazy with these people, was the fun of devising and dishing out these splendid punishments for her parents. And the lovely thing was that they seemed to work, at any rate for short periods. The father in particular became less annoying and unbearable for several days after receiving a dose of Matilda's magic medicine. What is that magic medicine? It's her teaching them a lesson, basically. Now, we don't do that to our parents, but in this case, Matilda, I think, has a little bit of a right to do. The pan in the chimney affair quite definitely cooled both parents down for a long time, and over a week, they were completely civil to their small daughter. But at last, this couldn't last. The next flare-up came one evening in the sitting room. Mr. Roman had just returned from work. Matilda and her brother were sitting quietly on the sofa waiting for their mother to bring in the TV dinners on a tray. The television had not yet been switched on. In came Mr. Roman in a loud check suit and a yellow tie. The appalling broad orange and green checks on his jacket and trousers, which are pants, almost blinded the onlooker, meaning it was just so ugly. He looked like a low-grade bookmaker dressed up for his daughter's wedding, and he was clearly very pleased with himself this evening. He sat down in the armchair and rubbed his hands together and addressed his son in a loud voice. "Well, my boy," he said, "your father has had a most successful day. He is a lot richer tonight than he was this morning. He has sold no less than 5 cars, each at a tidy profit. Sawdust in the gearboxes and electric drills on the speedometer cables, a splash of paint here and there, and a few clever little tricks, and the idiots were all falling over themselves to buy each car." He fished a bit of paper from his pocket and studied it. "Listen, boy," he said, addressing the son and ignoring Matilda. "Seeing as you'll be going into this business with me one day, you'll have to know how to add up the profits you make at the end of each day. Go ahead, get yourself a pad and a pencil, and let's just see how clever you are." The son obediently left the room and returned with writing materials. "Write down these figures," the father said, reading from his bits of paper. Car number one was bought by me for $200. 678 pounds. Now, it's pound because they're in England. That's their units. So we have dollars, they have pounds. It's similar, though. It's a little, I don't know the exact conversion rate. And sold for 1,425. Got that? The 10-year-old boy wrote down the two separate amounts slowly and carefully. Car number 1, the father went on, cost me car number 2, the father went on, cost me 118 pounds and sold for 760. Got it? Yes, Dad, said the son. I've got that. Car number 3 cost 111 pounds and sold for 999 pounds and 50 pence. So same thing, instead of we have cents, pence is their type of cents. Say that again, said the son. How much did it sell for? 999 pounds and 50 pence, the father said. And that, by the way, is another one of my nifty little tricks to diddle with the customers. Never ask for a big round figure. Always joke just below it. Never say 1,000 pounds. Always say 999 and 50 pence. It sounds much less, but it rarely isn't. Clever, isn't it, son? Very, said the son. You're brilliant, Dad. Car number 4 cost 86 pounds, a real wreck that was, and sold for 699 pounds and 50 pence. Not so fast, the son said, writing the numbers down. Right, I've got it. Car number 5 cost 630. I'm struggling with this page. Car number 5 cost 637 pounds and sold for 1,649.50. You got all those figures written down, son? Yes, Daddy, said the boy, crouching over his pad and carefully writing. Very well, said the father. Now work out the profits I made on each of the 5 cars and add up the total. Then you'll be able to tell me how much money your rather brilliant father made altogether today. That's a lot of numbers and a lot of sums, the boy said. Of course it is. You have to do all of them, though, the father answered. But when you're in a big business like I am, you've got to be hot stuff at arithmetic, meaning you have to be really good at math. I've practically got a computer inside of my head. It took me less than 10 minutes to work out this whole thing. You mean you did it in your head, Dad? The son asked, goggling. Well, not exactly, the father said. Nobody could do that. But it didn't take me long. When you finish, tell me what you think my profit was for the day. I've got the final cost written down here, and I'll tell you if you're right. Matilda said quietly, Dad, you've made exactly 4,303 pounds and 50 pence altogether. Don't butt in, said the father. Your brother and I are very busy with high finances. But, Dad... Shut up, the father said. Stop guessing and try to be clever. Look at your answer, Dad, Matilda said. A little less gently than the last time. If you've done it right, it ought to be 4,303 pounds and 50 pence. Is that what you've got, Dad? The father glanced down at the paper in his hand. He seemed to stiffen. He became very quiet. There was a long silence. Then he said, Say that again. 4,303 pounds and 50 pence, Matilda said. There was another silence. The father's face was beginning to get dark red. I'm sure it's right, Matilda said. You little cheater, the father suddenly shouted, pointing at her with his finger. You looked at my bit of paper. You read it right off what I've got written here. Daddy, I'm on the other side of the room, Matilda said. How could I possibly see it? Don't give me that rubbish, or garbage as we say in America. the father shouted. Of course you looked. You must have looked. No one in the world could give the right answer just like that, especially not a girl, a little girl at that. You're a little cheat, madam. That's what you are, a cheat and a liar. At that point, the mother came in carrying a large tray on which their suppers were. This time, it was fish and chips, which Mrs. Wormwood had picked up in the market and chip shop on her way home from bingo. It seemed that bingo afternoons left her so exhausted both physically and emotionally that she never had enough energy left to cook the evening meal. So, if it wasn't TV dinners, it had to be fish and chips. Why are you looking so red in the face about Harry? What are you looking so red in the face about, Harry? She said as she put the tray down on the coffee table. Your daughter's a cheat and a liar, the father said, taking his plate of fish and chips and placing it on his knee. Turn the telly on and let's not have any more talk. And that's where I'm going to stop. However, our next chapter is called The Platinum Blonde Men. Now, if you've ever read this or seen the movie, you know what's going to happen. And you know it's going to be a very funny chapter. You'll have to wait in anticipation, though, because we are not going to be reading together for another week. We have spring break. So I'm excited to start again in a week. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Please, please, please don't do any work. You're more than welcome to read or write. But don't do math, don't do any of that, because on normal spring break, you wouldn't do that either. So have a wonderful time and enjoy. Mwah.